Good morning. We're here at Sun and Fun 2024, the 50th anniversary Sun and Fun, and the other night, like two nights ago, I happened to be walking back from the Paradise City Stoll demonstration where I go to watch Warren fly his 1953 Cessna 180 in the Stoll competition, and he does very well for that weight class. And on the way back, wandering through the vintage camping, and what do I see? I always like to look and see if there's 180s around, and what do I see but the airplane that I once owned and dearly loved and sold about 2011. And that airplane was November 180 Sierra Mike, a 1953 Cessna 180, serial number 442. So first year production, light and fast, and a great airplane that I really loved and was honored to take care of. And I had about 50 hours tailwheel time when I got it, and I flew it another 700 hours, or 750. I'd have to check my logbooks. At the time I came by, it was evening, and I talked to the neighboring planes, and the owner was not around, but I found out the real key to it was I saw on the propeller that the owner was looking to be judged, and the airplane is in such beautiful shape that, and he put his phone number on, and I texted him, and he didn't just ignore me, he actually responded, so I'm really happy about that. So the current owner is Brandon Sullivan, is that correct?
That's right.
Hello, good morning, Brandon. And John, I didn't get your last name.
John Mead.
John Mead is from New Hampshire. Brandon is from New Mexico.
Originally from New Hampshire, residing in New Mexico.
Oh, wow, that's great. Well, one of the things, as I spent a lot of time going through the logbooks, I saw that it looked like that after the delivery from Cessna, the first place that the airplane lived was in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So it's gone full circle after 70 years back to New Mexico. And so I'll just say that I was sorry to have to let the airplane go. I was this was right after the recession. I was actually unemployed and could not handle the expense of an annual. I had to do the engine mount, I think the year before, and I was just concerned if something happened, I couldn't take care of the airplane. So I was lucky that finally, actually what I found is, a lot of people came. Somebody came from as far as Alaska to look at it, and but I sold it to a guy who worked at Citibank. He was a vice president at Citibank, I think, and he had an airport in Vermont. And he came down, and I'd finally broke down and had it detailed, where they came out and buffed it and polished it, and had good Imron paint, and it's still the same paint job, and so it looked really good. And I was happy that he bought it, and I flew with him back up to New York, and I really didn't find out too much of what happened after that. So hopefully you guys will be able to fill in the pieces. And so let's start, John. Let's start with tell me how you bought it from the guy that I sold it to, Robert Traficante, and what year did you buy it?
If I remember correctly, I think it was 2013.
Okay.
I had seen the airplane at his airport in Vermont. I was flying a Super Cub, and I saw the airplane. I liked the airplane. Since it was a 53, it was super light. Bob had yet to even get his license, pilot's license yet, and the airplane kind of intimidated him still. So jokingly, I said to him, hey, if you ever want to sell that, give me a ring. Well, Christmas that followed, I got a ring from Bob, says the airplane's for sale and you can have it. So I kind of hemmed and hawed for a while and stuff like that for the price he was asking. I said, well, let me get back to you, see if I can get a partner in it, because I already owned an airplane. And all of a sudden, it was a month or two later, he dropped his price $25,000 and says, I just want to see it go to a good home. So I went over to New York. We did a pre-purchase on it. There was squawks on it. There wasn't a lot, but there were some squawks. The shame was, since the time you sold it to him and brought it to New York, he'd only put about 30 hours on it. So for a couple of years, it had almost no use, and the only one that was flying it was his instructor, and he was flying it at will. So she didn't see the love, I guess is the way to put it to you. So when I bought her, she had a ton of little squawks that we went after, seat tracks, that type of thing. Because she's a heavy airplane, I put the poles on the back so that I could manhandle her by myself. Bob had done a tail wheel on her, and he had done a 496. He put a 496 and a dock in the panel, and that was about it. A little bit of maintenance, that type of thing.
So let me tell you a story about the 496. He put that in Miami with the A&P, and the panel at that time was floating and had little rubber shocks. It was basically a flat, I think almost a single large flat piece of aluminum. And when they put it back together, they didn't really get it quite aligned, and it wasn't clearing the starter button very well. So when we flew it to New York, we stopped for fuel, I think, in South Carolina or North Carolina. I think we might have had just one fuel stop, believe it or not. No, maybe two, but I can't remember. Maybe in Georgia and then in North Carolina. But the next day, after landing in Lincoln Park, New Jersey, we went to start it up and didn't notice immediately that the starter button was hung up on the panel. Because of the change in temperature, the clearance had changed, and the starter remained engaged for about a minute and a half, and that was as a result of a hurried installation of the 496 dock in the panel, and not really checking it. The other thing is the guys that installed the 496, they did not bother to attach the antenna. So we did a 1,000-mile flight without his 496 working, but I had a little Lowrance portable GPS, and we used that, and we managed to get there. So that's I think a relevant story considering.
Well, that starter issue, that button issue, I chased that for 6 months. Changed the starter button, and actually it eventually ended up being a connection up on the starter relay that finally fixed it. So,
Okay.
So yeah, and it was one. I know what you're saying is that it would work, and then all of a sudden something would. You go in for fuel, come back out, and it wouldn't want to start again.
So
believe it or not, I used to hand prop it.
Well, after that, that's what we had to do to get it from Lincoln Park to the private grass strip further upstate. But I never had a problem starting it except that one time, and I think probably the fact that the starter became a generator and was feeding back voltage into the whole starting system is the reason there were subsequent problems. Yeah. So I'm glad that you were able to track that down. So you had it for like 10 years is what I heard.
Roughly, yeah.
Okay, and so we're going to go inside in a little bit, but tell us just a little bit about what you did over the years.
Around 1,000 hours. I did replace a couple of jugs on it. Okay, she had a couple of low compressions. Prior to selling it to Brandon, we went right through the engine. Any little glitch, we went ahead and took care of. We did seat tracks to her. And then I upgraded the panel. I also then pulled out the 496 Bob had put in and put in a 696.
Okay.
So I also put new shoulder straps on her with the rotary style click. We did have to have the 180 inspection done on the tail, and sure enough, actually the tail had been put back together wrong. So that was all corrected.
So when you say the tail, do you mean the stabilator, the jack screw? What do you mean?
Okay, so the cone, the way the cone attaches,
yes.
The 180s have an AD on them, and that whole, basically the entire tail had to come off.
Okay.
And that's where they found that there was doublers missing, rivets missing, and so yes, I actually was one of the, let's say, the AD was actually aimed at this airplane, and it had problems.
Okay.
So that got taken care of. I call that my $10,000 tail.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, but other than that, I mean, I've actually flown this airplane all the way to Idaho and back from New Hampshire. Yes, we were using it on short grass strips. My strip in New Hampshire, where she lived, also Plymouth, Massachusetts, between the two strips. My strip in New Hampshire is only 1,700 feet long, so She was in and out of a 1,700-foot strip without any problem. She's super light. She has the cuff, as you know, sportsman.
Pistol,
Yeah. So I always liked the airplane. It just got to the point that I had a Super Cub and a 180, and I was heading towards retirement, so I needed to do something. So actually, I'm building my next airplane. So
and what are you building?
I'm building a Bearhawk Patrol.
Okay, that's a great airplane.
It is.
And
so I took the Super Cub and the 180, jam them together, and you get a Bearhawk Patrol.
that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
Very good. I will tell you that we worked on the jack screw in Miami and a couple other things, but I don't know. I'll tell you a little bit of the really ancient history that I know. This was, from what I heard, this was a mission airplane, and if you look through the logs, you can kind of see this. It was a mission airplane that crashed in either Central America or South America, and was sent back to South Florida in a container and purchased by a A&P, I think, that worked for one of the major airlines. I want to say Eastern or Pan Am or something like that. And he worked on it for 10 plus years, but really didn't have the money to finish it. And another A&P named Ken Poteet, who lived down in Homestead and maybe knew the other guy, really invested the money in putting new radios in, new wiring harness, transponder, and really getting it put back together, new upholstery, the paint, and prop and that kind of thing. So I think he sold it to someone for a couple of months and then bought it back. And the person who actually probably re-registered it had the tail number N172 Sierra Mike. And I just said that's criminal to have a Cessna 180 with a tail number of 172. So I was the one that changed it to 180 Sierra Mike. So I have some photos that show it as November 172 Sierra Mike and some that show it as 180 Sierra Mike.
Thanks for changing it.
In my ownership, I've actually at least 3 to 4 times been asked to sell that tail number.
Oh boy.
And I wouldn't do it.
Very good. Well, my tail number, I'm building an RV-12 and I'm getting not too far away from finishing it. And I have the tail number reserved 412 Sierra Golf. So I'm looking forward to getting that end number flying. So thank you, John, and we'll go inside and you can talk more about the panel and that. And so how did Brandon get connected with you? And you said you lived in New Hampshire, so maybe that's the thing.
Not at the time. I grew up in New Hampshire, but haven't lived there for 20 years. So currently in New Mexico. Air Force took us all over the place, and we ended up there, so we're still out in New Mexico.
Okay.
But my dad, Dave, here is...
I didn't get that connection. Okay. Hi,
still
Dave.
Up in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And we can talk more about his story, becoming a pilot and getting into the flying community in New England.
And who
that's
is this?
how I ended up meeting John, is through my dad.
And who is this young man?
Parker.
Hi, Parker. And Parker's going to clap for us occasionally if we need to sync the sound. So if you're watching this and the lips aren't quite in sync with the sound, we're doing the best we can. So Brandon, you've had the airplane about how long?
About 3 years.
Okay.
So we bought it in 2021. Yeah,
Okay.
in the summer of 21.
And so what's your background in flying and what have you owned before?
Background is military. So
Okay.
Started in high school, just a private pilot license, local airport in 152s.
Okay.
Went off to the Air Force and then became an F-16 pilot.
Wow.
And then did that for about 10 years. And then now I'm a contract pilot flying Mirage F1s for adversary air contracts. So still flying with the Air Force as the bad guy.
Very cool,
there.
very cool. So definitely a very capable pilot. And we're going to compare that with a certain owner that didn't actually realize what he was getting into when he bought a Cessna 180, because there are some techniques that work really well to fly it, but if you're not lucky enough to get the good advice on how to land them, they can definitely be a handful. So.
No, absolutely. They will keep you honest. And so bottom line is I didn't fly GA, General Aviation, for many years and didn't know how much I missed it until my dad, about 10 years ago, started flying and got his license, and then went all into the world of airplanes. and he ended up buying a Super Cub that we started flying together, and I fell back in love in a big way with GA, and specifically old tail draggers, and got my tail wheel endorsement, and it's just the challenge of it, the old machinery that is still so capable. So that was how I got back into, and then of course now wanting to buy my own airplane with the specific mission, right? Needed to have 4 seats for my wife and 2 young kids. It needed to be an old tail dragger, handle high density altitudes, go reasonably medium speeds, but also go really slow and get into strips that 1,000 feet. And that's a short list of airplanes that qualify. So a Skywagon is this top of the list there.
Very good. So I one of the things I worked on at one point was the Flint tanks and the tip tanks that hold, I think, another 20 gallons, something like that. I can't remember.
Say it's 15 or 17 a side, yeah, something like that.
Okay, so they really increased the range dramatically. Tell me if you guys have ever used the Flint tanks. If so, did they work? And
I did use them. They do work. And as you know, all they do is there's a valve rod that allows the tips to feed into the main.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have used them when I went back and forth to Idaho.
Okay.
We used them then. Typically to keep her light, we didn't use them.
Right. I filled them one time and they leaked like a sieve. And I don't know if I replaced both of them or just one. I think I probably did both of them. And I also did a bladder, at least one of the bladders.
And the Monarchs were in them at that time.
Okay. I can't remember. I think they were new, but I don't even remember.
We haven't exercised the tip tanks in my ownership yet. It's nice to have that capability, and I want to go just by myself, shake them out and test them out. But just based on flying with the family, or again, being able to load it up fully, and also not having to commit to flying for 3 hours before you can land, because you can't land with gas in them.
Wow.
You got to drain the mains down to half, feed them in, and so we just haven't used them. But still, being able to fly for 3 hours, that's about the time we're ready to stop and gas and go anyway.
I guess I'm not sure if the mission pilots, they were in them when I got them, and they were already old when.
It'd be great for a long ferry, but
yes, yeah, it was kind of nice. Okay, so let's say maybe we should walk around a little bit,
sure.
Brandon. But I kind of interrupted you, I guess, but. So what are some of the places you've been using it? You're from New Mexico, and
we live in southern New Mexico, and so high desert with mountainous terrain. In fact, our house is almost 9,000 feet MSL.
Wow.
The plane is hangared at an airport that's 4,100 feet, but it's almost never that density altitude. Density altitudes are routinely 8,000, 7,000 plus there. So it gets hot and high, and this plane excels at it. Mountain flying, we've landed at 10,000 plus foot density altitude airstrips up there. So
very good. So I see a customs decal.
It might have been.
So John,
might have been John's.
Did you take it? You take it over the border?
No, actually, it was on it when I got it.
Okay, maybe that was 2010 from me. I don't know.
There's no date, but there's one there.
Okay, so I see.
Is that good for a while? I don't know.
No, I wouldn't try it. No.
So,
as far as taking a cool place is, so again, only owned it for 2.5, 3 years, and it was down for a year. We'll get into that here. Bought it from John in New Hampshire. My dad and I flew her down to New Mexico. It was an awesome flight. We stopped at the antique airplane fly-in in Iowa. Yeah. And camped out under the wing there, and that was our kind of maiden voyage. And then and got her home. From there, some of the best flights are just with the family. So of course, I flew her by myself for about 20, 30 hours. I was also a low time tailwheel guy, about 50 to 100 hours in the Super Cub and 0 time in a 180. Insurance companies didn't like that very much, but they allowed it. So I got, spun up with the airplane, and finally to a point where I was comfortable flying with my family on board the most precious cargo. So being able to fly them is my dream in my airplane, even if it's just around the block for a sunset flight. But we've done some trips into Texas, and last October I flew it up to the High Sierra fly-in there at the Dead Cow Lake Bed. That was an absolute blast. About 1,000 miles around each way.
So about how many hours total have you put on it?
I have about 120, 130 hours tack time. I log it on the tack. So
Okay.
if you did it the FAA way, it'd be about 150, 200.
Okay. So let's do a quick, well, not a quick, let's walk around and take a look. And it's a little different. One of the things I noticed, there's three bladed propeller on it now. So what do you have? What's the engine now? And tell me how that, did you do that?
Yeah, the engine we did. We got a really well sorted out airplane from John and from you, and so very little, few squawks. It's just one of those things. We knew the engine at the time had about 1,100 hours, 10,050 hours, and a couple new jugs and whatnot. But I flew it up to annual. This would have been a year and a half ago, up in Moriarty, New Mexico, and when my AMP texted me. I was flying for work, I think. I got back, and my AMP said, call me when you get a chance, which
boy.
is never good. You don't want that text from your wife or from your mechanic. So I called him, and he said, here's the deal. It just started making metal.
Oh, wow.
Pretty significantly, and
I did oil analysis every 25 hours,
and I was
it
changing the
always
oil
looked
in that
good.
interval,
It always looked good, and
it had just an oil screen for all of its life.
right.
But,
I really considered doing the filter, but never did. I did use cam guard if I thought I wasn't going to be, and I believed in that. I was in a very humid climate down there in South Florida. But so you had to get an engine. You had no choice.
We had to get an engine. I mean, there was no choice. So we're looking at an overhaul, unfortunately. And then we started looking at options. So it was either just overhaul the 470L, or try to do that and upgrade it while we're at it. With me buying this plane and overextending a bit at the time, with the intention of buying my last plane first, we're investing in it. So we elected to do the P-Ponk. It's not called that anymore, but most people know it as that. So it's the XP 470-50 North Point engine. They bought it, the SEC, from P-Ponk.
So what does that start off as? Any particular 0470 or?
Yeah, well, not any particular. Thankfully, our engine, as the L, our case qualified for that upgrade. Not every, and I can't remember every variant.
Okay.
But a handful of 0470s qualify. So we decided to do that. Of course, that means that your crankshaft has to be in good shape, and it has to be a very specific crankshaft. Unfortunately, the crankshaft was just at the end of its life, so we had to go out looking for a crankshaft. That added about 6 months to the process. But all said and done, and then of course the propeller, the old two-blade Black Mac was not compatible with the SEC, so we found a buyer for that and ended up with the Hartzell Voyager.
Okay.
Engine firewall forward is now all shiny.
Okay, I didn't know if we'd be able to take a peek inside.
Whoa! What you can see in here,
and Millennium cylinders, and
so
I
now
see
it's basically 520 cubic inches, high compression pistons with the VAR crank.
Okay.
And something in the ballpark of 280 plus horsepower, but you feel the difference. Yep.
280 horsepower, and I see you finally put an alternator on it.
The alternator was required for the STC as well, so they swapped that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I always had a little charging problem with the generator, but managed to.
We were able to reuse the exhaust and the motor mounts, just refurbished.
Okay, that's good. That's great. Very nice. Well, I'm not going to ask you to pull the cowling off because I've done that a few times. That's a chore. Yeah. Okay, so we've got the
engine and the propeller combination. It's a beast of an airplane.
So I see that you got it up for judging?
No, this is just the tag that they gave me when we
okay,
camped here. I didn't do the judging registration.
Okay,
but
well, it looks good enough to judge, I would say. And you got some big wheels on it. And did you change out the brakes, or those?
Yeah, so the wheels and brakes didn't change them from John's ownership.
Okay.
The brakes are new as of the last, or the redone from the overhaul, but or the annual, but.
Okay. And I see some LED landing light and taxi light there.
I put all the lights. So my dad gave me the strobe lights as a Christmas gift, and then of course I had to go buy the other 4 lights to make them all match. So, so thousands of dollars worth of LEDs on the land all the way around.
So that's good to be able to see where you're going.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's continue to walk around and tell me anything you can think of that you think people might be interested in. So.
The 850s.
What's that?
I put the 850s on her.
Yep.
The 850s.
Yeah.
Okay, I used to run 6s on it because I was almost always on pavement.
Yep.
But and I want a little more airspeed. So very good. I see there's the vents for the Flint tanks, and it's got the stall fence between the ailerons and the flaps, and you kind of see the top now, the top. And
Right, it has the controversial flap gap seals, which I don't really know any better. So I love the way she flies over the fence or wherever. Some people have been walking by this week saying to remove them, and some people say to. But I'm not going to mess with it because I think it's dialed in.
I wouldn't mess with it. Okay, all three owners agree that there's nothing wrong with gap seals.
Some people say the Horton isn't the kit to go with, but again, I don't know any better, and it flies great. So.
It flies great. I think you should enjoy what you got.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Everybody has an opinion.
That's right. Yeah.
So
we got to point out the baggage door, right?
Right. Not many 53s have a baggage door.
Very few, and it always spoofs people because they don't. The astute Skywagon observer will know, but the push-button baggage door, and this is very handy.
Oh yeah. Especially when you. I think I've locked myself out sometimes and managed to crawl through. I can't even remember exactly, but it's certainly useful. And there's the pull handles.
These are awesome.
John,
you did those.
Yeah.
I did those.
I mean, when I do, solo ops, just moving this plane around, it's the light 180, but it's still, still gives you a workout.
Yeah, and that's a safe way to move it around. And as someone who's got a stabilator on their RV12, I filed it down. I hope I don't have clearance problems, but that looks pretty tight. The tighter it is, the better it flies and all that. I see that's not the Scott tail wheel that I remember, but any thoughts on the tail wheel?
Bob that's an Alaskan push wheel stinger, and he changed the entire assembly.
Okay.
And he did that before I done it.
Okay, so it's not even the same stinger anymore or any of that?
Nope, got upgraded.
Okay. And yeah, I see the beacon. I think I had a red light bulb in there that rotated around. So, okay. Very nice, very nice. And there's 2021. What is that sticker for?
I think that was the last New Hampshire registration.
That's it
would have been John's last one.
So you got to pay the state something. Okay.
Oh yeah, everybody's got to have their piece.
Very good. All right. So, are we ready to head in?
Yeah, one peek inside. We'll go around the other way.
Okay, let's walk around and go on the other side. And actually, I don't know what these are. What are these things? What in the world are those?
What do you think they are?
Not maybe to hold the cover? No.
Nope, it's to hold the skis.
Oh wow! So you floated on skis?
No, never put her on skis. But when we did the V-brace, if you notice the seaplane, V-brace got put in.
Okay.
So when the panel was always kind of like unstable, it just kind of floated around. So to give it more strength, because we were going to put it on skis, we put the seaplane brace in.
Okay. Wow. Well then, if it's got that, I would put it on floats. I know. Brandon's got.
It would still take a lot of modifications. That's not in the cards.
You looked into it. Don't you?
No. We're gonna figure out an airplane to put on floats. But it might be a super
You think your insurance is bad now?
No.
Yeah, you got to make sure the. Yes, that's a whole different ball game. Okay, so we're going inside.
Let me just move the seat back.
Yeah, that looks like my 2010 Customs Border Patrol decal. And I did take it to the Bahamas a couple times. Okay, so here we go. We're inside, and I see some leftovers from when I had it. It's different for sure, but I like the fact that there's some elements like the yolks and other things that are still like the original. Okay.
So if you start at the top, I went ahead and put this style vent in, the old tin can vents.
Okay.
Always used to rattle loose in New Hampshire, you freeze yourself.
Well, those vents are awesome. And now I need that airflow in 100-degree
To point right at your
temperatures.
face. Yeah, exactly. So I did those. I went ahead and did the rosin visors.
I also couldn't fly without those.
Okay. So I upgraded, and if you turn around, you'll notice that I did this style of seatbelt. And
These are great.
these
Retractable.
are, what's
Okay.
perfect about that is that.
Yeah.
So you got your 4 points and it releases, so this is great. I didn't do it in the back seat.
And that's a big safety factor too.
I wouldn't
the
do
extra.
stole without this.
Okay.
No. The lower part of the panel, you can see some changes to it. Obviously, I went ahead and put the 696, which is right on top of where Bob put it in.
Right.
Okay.
John, do you notice anything different at a glance? I haven't done much to the panel except one thing.
Actually, no, I can't tell the truth.
The mixture's moved.
Oh, you did move the mixture. Okay.
Yeah, we got new controls with the new engine. So
Yeah,
you put the mixture
I
down
noticed
there.
the verniers are different.
Yeah.
All right.
I wanted some GPS so I could do WAS approaches, so I went ahead and put a 430 in. That was a used 430, but it was the second 430 in a corporate airplane, and it had no time on it. So I got it recertified, and we went ahead and did that, reconfigured the gauges a little bit, because as you know, there's a huge support here in the middle. So I went ahead and did that, put the mount on for your iPad can fly over here on the mount, and then just made sure that we had duplicate and backup, so everything is backed up, and that's kind of what I did. Obviously, we put a new transponder in
Okay.
with ADS-B while I
Okay.
ran to the panel. It says, well, I got to get it done because I was flying it around Boston airspace.
Okay. Yes. I see you made the hole around the starter button a little larger. That was what I think was the initial cause of
When
the
we put that new starter button in, we basically we found it, but we found out that it was still a relay. But like you said, if it became a generator, it probably caused the problem.
So, and it's very nice to see the ashtray. I'm not a smoker, but I think that's
the key
a
hole.
sign of the times,
That's where I always hid the key.
From 1953. So, very cool. All right.
And then, of course, prior to the new engine, I went ahead and put the engine analyzer in as well.
That engine monitor is great. I love it.
Yeah, I used to, honestly, I tell you, I ran it.
You can pull the master there real quick and it'll light up.
I used to run at Lena Peak.
Okay.
I ran it like 60% power or 50% power Lena Peak. I mostly flew above 8,000 feet.
So we're going to blame the jugs on you?
No, I had no metal in the oil.
Yeah.
I think the jugs is the fact that if he didn't fly it very much, I always tried to fly it at least once a week, and if I didn't, I was really careful about flying it because of the blow by around the rings and all the corrosive nature.
Bob did not fly the airplane, so that was in my opinion, that was the biggest problem with it.
Okay, so I'm not going to run your battery down, but that's great. So
as you can see in his conversion, the generator came out, an alternator went in, which is fantastic.
very good.
Yeah. So one thing, I'd never flown with a generator before. So
We didn't
everything
touch-
else, the rear
touch
seat
the-
stayed the same. As you
Yeah.
can see, the overhead's the same.
Yes. I actually I hope the FAA isn't watching this, but I actually manufactured some little LED bulbs for the interior lights with resistors, and this was in an era before you could buy plug-in 12-volt bulbs to replace automotive stuff, and I wanted to conserve power whenever I could, and so that was one of the goofy things I did. And I see the valves for the Flint tanks are still there. It's really, you know, when you think about I drive a 2003 truck, and I feel like, you know, I'm a hero for driving a 20-plus-year-old truck. And here we are in a 1953 airplane that goes cross-country. So pretty amazing thing. And that's great. So thank you, gentlemen, so much for showing us around. And I feel really lucky to get both you here. And
it's awesome. You know, I'm just the latest caretaker, but to have about 25 years of ownership here at the same time and learn more about her is really cool.
And I can tell you that you just made the whole show for me. When I walked by and saw this on the ramp or out here in the vintage aircraft parking, it just really made the whole trip worthwhile for me. I'm so happy to see it flying and in good hands and well taken care of. So I want to thank you. I hope I can put a decent video together. It's probably going to be long, but I think worth watching. So thank you again.
There's a picture that Brandon has, and it made my, you know, you always pass something on. You always have seller's remorse.
Oh.
And there's a picture of him, his kids, and his wife flying to Texas. And I was like, that's what the airplane was made for.
So in one of the videos I did, I said, after flying it to New York, I had no regrets about selling it, and that was really because I was really struggling at the time financially. I was unemployed, and I knew that I couldn't take care of it the way that it needed to be taken care of. So, you know, at the time if ever comes that you said you wanted to buy your last airplane first.
You never know what life has in store, but yeah, that was.
Yeah, if you can't, pass it on to the right person, right, and hopefully they'll take good care of it too.
Look underneath the gear.